Good evening and welcome to the special live production here. We're coming straight from the Karas Regional Council in Keetmanshoop. It's definitely voting day indeed, and we'll bring you the latest election coverage. I'm joined in the studio by Chief Reporter, that's Ellen Nanuses Alberts, to talk to us more about her experience as she's been reporting the elections. A very good evening, Ellen.
Good evening, Janet.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ellen. Now, obviously, Ellen, I mean, we've come a long way in covering these elections from 2009. Just as a junior reporter, starting covering these elections. Talk to us about your observations, really, the changes that we've seen now and the observations that you've seen now sort of coming 10 years down the line.
Thank you very much, Janet. Janet, one of the things that is very clear in these elections is that there is a very high expectancy amongst the voters about the type of changes that they want to see, particularly changes that reflect that there's been improvement to their personal lives. The second thing that we are also observing in these elections is that it is highly contested, and that they also want to see, we always have to maintain COVID regulations, so that from the side of the political parties, it's very clear that there is high competition and that they are determined and that they want to move forward in terms of bringing the type of development that the people are requesting. For the first time, I think that there's also a correlation between what the people say they are voting for, as well as what the parties say they are going to offer. Another thing that we are noticing, Janet, during these elections is that the participating voters are able to narrate, they're able to articulate what the regional and local authority elections are about. One of the things is that they speak to the mission of regional councils and what local authorities are supposed to do. They will tell you they're supposed to bring roads for us. They will tell you they're supposed to bring services to us. They also tell us that they're supposed to bring economic opportunities to rural areas and not just to urban areas. And they speak to us even on the policies of rural to urban migration. So those are outstanding things to realize, that the electorate is so aware and that they understand the issues at play and what they are voting for.
Now, Ellen, you've been covering the three constituencies in the Karas region. That's for Bersaba, Keetmanshoop, urban and rural. Talk to us about your experience, really, as you go along the different polling stations.
Well, this morning we started around 6 o'clock and we realized that people have been queuing already from 4 in the morning. What was outstanding is that when we came to the polling venues, that the youth constituency was very much high in attendance, and that they are very determined when it comes to making their voices heard during this election. Also, we noticed that polling venues were able to open on time. We noticed that they did have the material that they require. We noticed also that things started smoothly. However, there was just one challenge that we realized, that in Arwap, that there is a challenge right now from the Namibian economic freedom fighters who feel that the elections in the Arwap local authority needs to be nullified, because from the reports that we received from the party agent, they only realized when a member of the party came to vote that their candidates are not on the ballot paper. So what's transpiring in that case at this moment is that we spoke to ECN officials to verify whether this information is correct, and they informed us that currently there's an investigation taking place to ascertain what transpired and what needs to happen in such a case.
So we'll definitely get more details on that a little bit later on during the course of the week.
Yes.
Now, let's go back to the presence of the youth. During the course of the week, we've been obviously interviewing a lot of the young people voting for the first time, and found this one young lady who spoke about the fact that now young people are looking for credible and competent candidates, and the focus should not be about popularity and the political party, but really how credible is this candidate? What's your thoughts on that?
That is not only the sentiment of young people. When we were interviewing young people for this particular election, but first let's take a look at this. You must remember that in 2009, they were the born frees for the first time. Now in 2018, there are people who have become the millennials, and they are maturing. So they are the ones that are speaking to us right now and expressing that it's not about political parties anymore. It's not about the popularity of parties anymore, but that it's about the capacity of the voted candidates to be able to deliver. I'll give you an example of what an elderly told us in test today. She said, all the years we have been voting, we have realized that the people we have voted for have become richer, have become more well off. Their lives are better, but not the lives of the voter. She mentioned that the elected are living in houses of 16 rooms, while the electorate are still living in 4-roomed houses. And she said this time they are voting for themselves, for things to improve for themselves. Another voter told us that it's unacceptable for local authority or regional councillors to tell them there's no money for development, but that the time has come for them to stand up and to source for funding and not only rely on the capital budget of the government. And they said it's time for them to stand up, go and make partnerships, realize what you can do for your people, and also source funding from outside of the country. But that something needs to change.
There's definitely changes that they want to see. Now, talk to us, have you spoken to a lot of the political party agents? What have they been saying about this process?
The political party agents, when we spoke to them at CES, they were relatively happy with the process. Queues were moving fast. People were being assisted. One thing they mentioned at CES was that the voter verification device was not able to pick up the voters' cards that were issued during the last week before the elections, the duplicate cards. So they noted that all the duplicate cards that they have been issuing just before the elections, the VVD could not pick them up. And then they had to use the focal persons that was appointed by the ECN to verify voters with their voter card. And that process was also fast, and they were able to register the voters and at the same time use the Form 25, Elect 25, to be able to allow those voters to please vote. Another thing that the political parties also informed us was that many voters were coming to the wrong constituency to vote. And this is particular at the Keetmanshoop urban constituency, at the Vierkarover Hall, where they mentioned that people were coming with voters' cards that are registered to Beersheba constituency for one, for Keetmanshoop rural for another one, or even for Karasburg, and that they didn't understand very well that you vote in the constituency where you are registered and where you live. And they indicated that it's most probably necessary that for upcoming elections, that particular element, that regional and local authority elections, you vote in the area where you live, must be explained much more clearer. Everything else seems to have been fine, but they highlighted that as a major challenge.
We obviously, I mean, it's way past 9 o'clock. We obviously anticipate now the polling stations are closed, or obviously those that are still in the polling stations will continue to vote until the last sort of person votes. Talk to us about the counting process and expectations, especially now that we've now moved away from the EVMs. We're now working on the paper ballots. What's the expectation? Do we expect this counting process to happen speedily? What do you think?
You see, when the argument for the paper trail election was called for in saying that we should not use the EVMs anymore, the argument was that using the paper trail or voting manually was more transparent. So one would assume that as they are voting and the counting starts, that it should be a much more simpler process. Because the verification centers that were introduced were the EVMs, one would also assume would not be so complicated at this point in time, where you need to do the tallying for the EVMs, but also make sure that you collate those results and that it makes sense. So in this time, we are hoping and expecting that counting will go faster, and that it will also be more transparent, because counting of the votes will take place in the presence of all the ECN officials as well as the party agents, and that it will also take place in the presence of the police force that's present with them in the venues. So one looks forward to a very swift counting process without any complications, and that whatever they find within the venues, that they should be able to have an explanation, and that they should be able to solve the matter amongst themselves internally.
Now, let's go back to what some of the voters have been saying, especially the type of candidates they would like to see.
Thank you very much for that question. You know, after the political parties have done all they could, they've really gone all out to campaign. They've gone all out and have used different strategies to reach the voter. They've used social media. They've used house-to-house visits to people. They have even had one-on-one sessions with people. They've used WhatsApp, Facebook. They have live sessions that they broadcast on Facebook. They've done everything that they really could. But the reason why I like your question is because at the end of the day, it comes down to the candidates that will fill the position. And people want to see the candidates that they are creative, that they are industrious, that they can look at sand and say, I can make glass out of this. That they can look at an open field of land just lying there and say, we can have a plot for a lot of flats on here, or we can have a park for children. That it's people that see potential, that have vision, that can see what is possible, and that can garner the support for particular projects that they want to embark on, and that can also generate the funding or find the funding necessary. And it's going to take partnerships, because we all know that resources and money is not in full supply all the time. Currently, the economy is also struggling. So you can assume that when they come into office, there will be quite a few challenges that they'll be facing that they need to deal with. I've been saying to my colleagues that political parties will be at a place where they will have to push from behind. I don't think that it's going to be leading from the front. But those are the type of candidates, industrious, creative, and innovative candidates that people want to see.
Very interesting that you mentioned that we spoke to one youth, and really especially just speaking about young people, or not even young people, but just people in general who feel, what's the point of voting? Why should I even vote? It's a waste of time. What's your thoughts, especially when the expectation is that they want, or there's some people that want change and they want it immediately. What's your thoughts on that?
Janet, one of the things that we always look at after an election is the voter turnout. The voter turnout will also indicate to you whether people were really interested to come and vote, or whether people actually even came to vote. Remember that in the presidential and National Assembly elections, we are looking for a 50+1 vote to declare somebody a winner. Now, if you look at a voter turnout of 20% and less, did that political party actually win, or the candidate win? It doesn't qualify for the 50+1% that you need to actually win. So you need to see that people have actually come out to vote to be able to determine that there is a clear winner. And that is why it's so important that people, if they want to see change, do not just talk about it, but turn up at the polls. So that at the end of the day, you know what's interesting about the Beersheba constituency we visited today? They have 6,659 registered voters. During the 2015 elections, they had more than 5,800 registered voters. They had a voter turnout of 71.7%. Keetmanshoop Urban had the lowest voter turnout with 30.6%. Now you tell me, if people want change, are they willing to go to the polls to make their voice heard, or are they not interested? It comes out in the voter turnout.
Now, just as we conclude, Ellen, I think this, obviously, the presidential elections, general, the local authority and regional elections, the process of how you decide who's the winner is obviously a little bit different. Just talk to us about how that works.
Currently, for the local authority and the regional council election, local authorities, it works in a quota system. You will collate all the votes, you will divide it by the parties that are contesting in that particular area, and then based on how many people have voted and how many were successful, you will divide the seats amongst them. It's a little bit different for the regional council elections because it's a candidate per constituency. So that goes back to the 51+ result that you are looking for. And then the other seats will be divided into who came second and who came third and who came fourth. Remember that for regional councils, when you have 7 constituencies, you will have seven regional councillors. If one party wins all the constituencies, they will form the leadership of that council.
I have to unfortunately cut you right there, Ellen. I'm sure we can talk for a very long time about this discussion, but thank you so much for joining us and providing an update on this.
You're most welcome, Janet. It's been a pleasure being with you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. That is Chief Reporter Ellen Nanesis Alberts just briefing us on the situation here in Karas region in terms of her experience and observations here in the Karas region. We are crossing over now to the ECN Center in Studio 2 to our colleagues right there. It's bye-bye from all of us here.